Welcome to another episode of Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. On this show, we meet artists transforming lives with their work. I love the sound of running water. The sound that you're listening to is the fountain in my backyard. It's one of the few frivolous purchases I made during the pandemic that I don't regret. Did other people spend way too much time online looking at lots of things that you really didn't need but convincing yourself that you did? Weights, home exercise equipment, gardening tools, camping gear? Those were just a few of the things I felt I needed during those long months of not being able to leave home. There's another thing I saw online, though, that at first I really didn't think I needed. That was on-camera performance coaching. I came across these short video tips on Instagram, and even though I was sure that I was a strictly behind-the-camera type of person, I watched the tips anyway because they were just really fun and interesting videos to watch. The reason these videos were so fun is all due to the person making them, Michelle Kennedy. Michelle Kennedy had years of experience as a news reporter and anchor in San Francisco, and is now teaching on-camera and writing skills to college communication students. As I watched Michelle's Instagram videos, I began to realize that in each of them, she wasn't only providing quick tips for being on camera. She was also sharing funny experiences from her past to illustrate what to do, and sometimes what not to do on camera. More than that, though, Michelle often includes in her videos what I think of as a little pep talk. She looks straight into the camera and she tells me why I can be on camera and why I shouldn't let my fear or doubts hold me back. I now find myself looking forward to these video pep talks, so I reached out to Michelle to ask her to come on the show. I'm so glad I did, because I also discovered her book, Don't Pee in the Wetsuit, which is a humorous journey around the world and through grief over the unexpected death of her father. You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Listen and let us inspire you. When the pandemic started and everyone suddenly jumped onto Zoom, I thought, oh no, my worst nightmare. Having to be on camera multiple times a day. Everyone was sharing tips on how to look better on camera, and I just kind of tuned them out. Not because I thought that the information wasn't useful, but mostly because I was really in denial about how long this new reality of being on the Zoom camera was going to last. It wasn't until I came across Michelle Kennedy's on-camera performance tips that I started to think about why I didn't like to be on camera. Could it have anything to do with how I feel about myself? Is it about my nose or about my frizzy hair? Did I feel too old to be on camera? This kind of self-doubt and negative self-talk are exactly the kinds of things that Michelle addresses in her on-camera performance tips. I'm so glad to have her on the show to ask her more about her coaching and to talk about her book, Don't Pee in the Wetsuit. Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for being on this episode today. Before we get started talking about your work, can you just introduce yourself by telling us what you do?
Hi, Pam. Thank you for having me. I love what you're doing, and I think it's important, and I believe in it, that art does heal all wounds. My name's Michelle Kennedy, and I have it's like an arc of creative stuff, from television news reporting and anchoring, to acting, to hosting, to writing and publishing my work, to teaching college students how to do all of the above. And recently, I've been working on camera consulting or coaching outside of the classroom with regular people, mostly who are putting videos out there of themselves on social media and their websites. And honestly, a lot of people have a lot of fear around that because it's scary.
Yes, and I can relate to those people. It's really funny because during the pandemic, I was really watching people who I knew who were creative people to see sort of what they were up to on social media. And that's when I really noticed all of your on-camera performance coach posts. And that may have been something that never would have caught my attention in the past, but because of Zoom, I've been on camera so many more times than I ever thought I would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I started watching your post, but beyond the on-camera advice, I started feeling like I was getting little pep talks every time I watch one of your posts, because I felt like a lot of your posts are like, wow, this is really good advice for life. It's not just about being on camera. I would love to know more about your journey and about your philosophy and how it is that you get this kind of flavor. I don't want to call it self-help because I feel like people, that's sort of become a cliche, but these little, I'll just call them little mini pep talks when I see your coaching tips.
You know, it is a little self-helpy. You just said that and I thought, well, she's right. I mean, I'm a big advocate of self-help. Anything anyone can teach me, any book that can teach me how to be more soft and comfortable in my skin with other people and really go easier on myself, I'm all for it. And I have realized in doing this work for so many years, especially the on-camera performance in whatever way I'm teaching it, whether it be future television news reporters, or like I was saying, people who are simply trying to market themselves or their businesses, I found that probably, it's such a high number, but at least 80% of it is, how do I see myself? It's not the knowledge that I have or what I'm trying to share. If I feel like I, gosh, for lack of a better term, am a big piece of shit or an imposter, it's going to be very hard for me to put myself on camera, because all I'm listening to is the voices that say, you suck, you shouldn't be doing this, and you're too old, you're too fat, you don't know enough, you're this, you're this, you're this. And that just absolutely shuts people down. So as I was building these videos, I started to realize what I'm talking to so many clients about is this very thing, the psychology of it, of how can we tame this and get more comfortable in sharing what we know and sharing our specialness and sharing our journey, our brand, whatever it is. And if we can hone that, we can rule the world, but it's really scary.
Yeah. Well, so it's so interesting because you've been on camera so much. And am I hearing you say that you have those same voices?
Even today, my first live shot, my first job, Idaho Falls, it was a bank robbery. I call it the world's smallest bank robbery because the bank was like a room, and the cars in this town at that time looked like they were from like the 70s. It felt like I was in a movie. And the news director called, and I'm barely 22 years old. And he says, this is your first live shot, and it's snowing. And I'm from California. I'm like, what is this white stuff? And I get there and I interview this guy that looks like he's from Central Casting with this big mustache, and he's burly, like the sheriff. This is how small this town was that I was in. I think it was Ryrie, Idaho, Southeast Idaho. And he's, talking, and to get an interview with the sheriff is so unusual. Like, for instance, when I was working as a reporter in San Francisco, that would never happen. You would get the media person designated to that area. But here is small town. So I had the sheriff. I was very nervous. I thought I was going to throw up. And I was so scared. And I was interviewing him and sort of holding this arm because my hand was shaking and my face was shaking. And I realized very early on, like, I have major anxiety. And through doing work around that over the years, it's gotten a lot better. And I've brought a lot more awareness and really self-compassion around it. But at the time, it was more like, what's wrong with you? Stop this, stop this. And this very rejecting of myself. And I dealt with that all the way up until I got out of television 11 years later, just when I felt like it was a big live shot or a big moment, I would just get like, oh my God. And people wouldn't know that because they'd see my work and say, no, you're fine, you're fine. And I'm like, inside, I was not fine. I felt like a phony. I felt super insecure. And part of the reason of being on television in the first place was I thought if I can do that, then I can get over these insecurities. And I was so wrong.
That's so interesting. Well, you are bringing up this point that you did have a really successful television career. And then in 2009, you took a very big step. I'm wondering if you would talk about that. And I know this, I'll just give a little preview because I read your book. And I want to talk about your book, but I want to talk about what led up to your book first.
Thank you. Yes. So worked in television news for all those years and dealt with this anxiety, dealt with the stress of it, and really got sick of that. And also working on Christmas and doing live shots at 11 o'clock in the rain, and then having to work on stories for the morning show. And it was a crazy, hectic schedule. And I was starting to look inward, and I was starting to do some of this work. Well, where's the insecurity come from? Where's the anxiety coming from? Why am I drinking so much? That's a part of my story as well. And I realized that continuing being in television news was not going to jive with this growth that I was seeking, and this like awareness and understanding myself and how I moved through the world. And so I decided I wanted to get my master's, teach, and then also write and write nonfiction, write about some of these things I was learning about all of the things we're talking about. And so before I did that, a friend of mine who was also changing careers, we took an 11-country trip around the world, and it was about 6 months long. And It was wonderful and scary. And I had no intentions of writing a book. We were maybe going to write one about travel. And I started writing, and all this stuff came out about my dad's death and how I hadn't really dealt with that. So it ended up being, as you know, my writing coach calls it a funny book about grief, because there's so much grief and pain, but there's also this crazy, debaucherous romp with my friend and I through all these countries and all the people we met and the adventures that we got into. And sometimes I think, especially creatively, we really have no idea what's coming. I mean, 10 years ago, if someone had said, you're going to have a podcast and it's going to help people, and you probably have been like, what? And here we are. So that's kind of how that happened. It was kind of organic.
I just finished reading the book, and just to share with you, there were so many sections where I thought, oh my gosh, just put in a different country or a different something. And I feel like this could almost be parts of my life as well. And your writing coach is absolutely right. It is a funny book about grief. And I've noticed that in your social media posts too, that you use a lot of humor. But it seemed like your father died very suddenly and unexpectedly. And it felt like for you, there was a lot of unfinished business there. Do you mind talking about that at all? Because that plays a huge role in the book.
Yeah. And thank you so much. I'm glad that you related. That's where I first started learning when I wrote the book, before I really got on the writing train and was getting into it, is how much we connect through writing and connect through pain, frankly. And I know that you're learning that as you put these episodes together. And that's not a bad thing, because I feel that the more we can connect through it, the less alone we feel and the easier it is for us to maybe not get out of it. Does grief ever completely go away? No, but we can learn about ways to deal with it and live a happier and more content life. Yeah, I was a reporter in Sacramento. That was my third job. I was 24 and there was a big car accident. It was raining. I-5 was shut down. I was going to be sent to cover the sort of night side shift of this terrible accident. People had died. I saw a live shot from another station on a monitor. They said something about a 50-year-old duck hunter from the small town of Lodi died in the accident. That's where I was originally from. And I just had this gut feeling that it was my dad. I did some more research and, bugging my coworkers, like, we've got to get the information on this. And, they're not going to release the name until next of kin's been notified. And I'm saying, I am next of kin. I'm telling you, this is my dad, because it's such a small town. Anyway, fast forward, it was my dad. And it was awful, but I'm glad I figured it out before I was sent out there unnowingly. Like, that would have been extra tremendous to go out and be like, wait, that's my dad's truck. And then, it would have been the whole movie scene.
Right.
So, but it was so awful and it was so sensational. And then, here I am working in news, but then my dad's a part of the news because his picture's on the news. And it was weird to be a part of it. It was the beginning of the end for me of realizing, like, I really don't want to be working in this capacity in this business anymore. And it took me so many years to let go of it because of the deep attachment I had to it. My whole identity was being on TV. And I didn't realize that at the time. But as far as the book is concerned, I had to write about it. I thought it was so much about the accident, but to what you said, it was really more about my relationship or unfinished relationship with a very hard man. He was
Mm.
funny and interesting and could fill a room and was fun and connected me to nature and taught me how to like kick ass and get stuff done and be ambitious and be like traveling. And I got so many wonderful things from my dad, and he loved me deeply, but he was also extremely hard on me. And so I was constantly trying to please him. And it wasn't until I wrote the book that I really realized that, and realized that the accident was just not, that wasn't it. It was this story that I told, like, my dad got in this accident. But really, what I needed to work through was that, like, what do you do when somebody dies and there's unfinished business there and you can't fix it? You can't work on it with them. They're gone. So it's all on you.
Yeah. Well, what I love is that in the book, you go back and forth. You do talk about like the crazy, I mean, it's a trip that anybody would want to take. I think I would want to take it. You know, you traveled with a friend. She sounded wonderful. You
She
guys
lives 4 minutes from me, by the way. I'm going to go there for dinner tonight.
Oh, that's so
Isn't
cool.
it cool?
Oh, well.
She dragged me down to San Diego, and it was a good move. But anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, no, that's fantastic to know that you guys are still so close, because the book would go back and forth between the wonderful and amazing times, the fantastic foods you were eating, the really interesting people you were meeting, lots of handsome men that you were meeting. And then something would kind of come up, or at least this is how you structured the book, where there would be a scene with your dad to work through. And what I'm curious about is, I think grieving doesn't ever finish. It just changes and transforms over time. But I am curious about, did it feel that at the end of the book you'd sort of gotten to a new place, or was it even in the process of writing the book that helped you sort through some of these feelings?
It was through the process of writing the book and editing the book, honestly, for 7 years after I got back from the trip, that I really sifted through my pain and my grief over that, because I was so mad at my dad, and I had to come to the place where I believed that he did the best that he could with me with the tools that he had. And there was way more good than there was bad. And I think that that can really help us with parents, especially parents who die, that we do feel we might have this unfinished business. You know, they did this, so I'm like this. Yeah. I mean, go to any therapist and it's going to come back to your childhood. But what do we do with that? How do we move on? How do we not stay stuck in that resentment? And I have found that the best way is to forgive, let it go, believe that they did the best that they could. Of course, there's situations where people might be going, no, they didn't. And I understand every situation is different. But for me, letting that go and moving on as an adult has been super freeing. And it's time in my mid 40s to parent myself. You know, I'm already doing that. I've been doing that for years. So if I can take care of myself and create that place where I have a home and a safe space within me, then I don't need to blame anybody anymore and say, you didn't do this. It's just so draining after a while. And it's not perfect. There are times that I think of things with my dad and go, I wish that I had gone differently. But mostly it's not like that. That's like 1% of the time. Most of the time I think of my dad in nature. I'll fall on my butt and do something stupid, and I can like hear him laughing at me. And I feel very connected to him. And I know that he's very proud of me. But that's also kind of my spirituality and my connection with, and believing that when somebody dies, they're not really dead, but that's also just me. But I guess what's my point? My point is the writing helped me get through the grief. I think that writing can really help. I think therapy can help, group therapy, talking to somebody else going through grief. There are many ways. Exercise where you're sweating your brains out, that helps a lot. But I do believe that we don't have to be stuck in grief, even grief of the worst kind, that there are ways to find a place that is less painful. And that's what I think that our departed would want for us. They would not want us to be sitting home and going, my life is over in a million years, just as much as we wouldn't want that for them. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm very curious about now taking this into coaching. When you have clients who come to you Are you finding that a lot of the same fears that maybe you had are what they're struggling with, or are they different things? What kind of things are people struggling with when they want to be on camera, but they're too afraid to be on camera?
I would say that our struggles around being on camera are fairly universal, whether we have experience or not. I find that many people, even if they have a ton of experience, own a business, have been on a stage speaking to hundreds of people and just kicked butt, when it comes to being on camera, there's such a strong voice of, you don't belong here, you're doing it wrong, everybody's going to laugh at you, you're not good enough, you're too old, you don't look right. And all of those things that go through our head, it seems to be more intense when it comes to being on camera. And I know that we always hear that the biggest fear of people is public speaking. And I would say that public speaking, yes, is such a big fear, but being on camera is right up there, if not even more sometimes. I think of it as a piece of
Mm-hmm.
plastic. And that's where I got my start, was speaking into the piece of plastic, the lens. And I didn't really think of it
Mm-hmm.
as there could be or is X amount of people on the other end watching it. It just kind of was me and the camera. But I can see where a lot of people are already fast forwarding the tape, that they don't sound right, that people are going to be making fun of them, and that it's not going to go well. My answer to that, and what I've worked with so many people on, and what I continue to work with them on because I understand, is that A, people are not thinking about us as much as we think they are. And we're all just doing the best job we can. In vulnerability and putting ourselves out there is incredibly attractive, no matter what. So when myself or anybody else is putting their story out there, sharing their brand, sharing themselves, it's way less likely that someone's going to be saying, I can't believe they did that, they're terrible. Rather, they're probably inspired, they're probably learning something. And then, frankly, they're moving on to the next video. So, are they even spending that
Right.
much time on us anyway? They're not thinking about us.
Right, right. Well, here, I want to read you a quote from your book, which I thought summed up not only the book, but kind of the work that you do really well. You said, I want to tell my story so other people who have gone through the bad stuff know we're in this together. We're all going through something. Nobody is really alone when you think about it. It's like we're all connected, but what binds us most
Mm.
is our pain. How do you think this on camera performance coaching, is it sort of a continuation of this aspiration or this idea from the book?
Yeah, all of it is. I feel like all of my creative work is somehow tied into that. And it always goes back to that. Even
Mm.
at the beginning, when I thought, I'm going to teach on camera performance as a side hustle because I have so much experience, I thought it was just about the technique. It is about the technique. But then as I got deeper into it, I realized, here we are again. All of these insecurities are coming out for me, and they're coming out for other people that I'm working with, whether it be a student in the classroom, whether it be an adult client. And yes, the pain is coming out, because the pain is the insecurity. The pain is I have 20 years experience at this, and I still feel like I'm making a fool of myself. They're going to laugh at me. And every time that I can reel that back in and say, I have permission to take up this space just as much as anybody else does. And through sharing my insecurities around it, I am helping and empowering other people. But even that's hard, because when I say those words, I believe them to be true. But that kind of ego voice is going, who do you think you are? I mean, come on. And that's another thing we deal with. You write something, you put it out. Often that voice will come. You paint a picture and maybe sell it, feel proud of yourself. And then maybe an hour later, the voice is there. They don't realize you don't know how to paint. What are you doing? And so it's this constant not fighting of that voice. I don't fight the voice anymore. Now I just put my arms around the voice and say, you know what? I know this is really scary, because what if they laugh at you? What if they reject you? But I am much more alone and rejected if I don't share my story, share myself, put my work out there. I am missing out on connecting with other people, even if it's one person, you know? So that's what I've learned. And that is what I'm really trying my best to support people around with this on camera stuff, is that you deserve to be there. You deserve to take up that space. There are people that will really appreciate it and already do. You're going to help people, and you're going to help your own strength the more that you do it, your own self-worth.
Right. So besides your on-camera performance coaching, what's next for you? What are you working on now?
I'm halfway through a book, and a second book, and it is around my crazy news career. But it dives into the stress of it, the crazy stories, the dead bodies, all the things I got into, the first murder trial I covered, working in small markets and big markets, and this whole time being kind of on this spinning wheel of, I just got to do better. I have to get to a better station. I have to, make my dad proud, as I said before, and all these ideas of what is it going to take for me to be somebody, and not knowing that I already was somebody. That took me so many years. And so I'm writing about that. And I'm writing about, I've been sober for 9 years, and my drinking really built during this time because I used alcohol as a way to help me with that anxiety. And unfortunately, I was on such a wheel that it would be this sort of replay of drink, help myself with the anxiety, say and do stupid things, feel like an idiot, say I would stop drinking, drink some more, keep drinking, in this wheel for 20 years. And so I can't really write about the television news career without writing about the drinking and how I was using that as a way to numb myself and not feel the things that I wanted to feel that I was going through. And so it's kind of those two things are where I'm at. I have to say I was in a great writing group. COVID shut that down for a bit. Then it went on Zoom, and I put a pin in it, and I wish I hadn't done that because it's been very hard for me to start that again. So that's what I'm working on now. I'm working on the on-camera stuff. I'm teaching different media studies classes at a couple different universities. So my goal looking ahead is to thin it out. As you and I have talked about, it's so hard to thin it out.
Yes.
Not do so much,
yes,
right?
I know. Oh, yes, have all these balls up in the
And
air.
just be, if I don't have all these balls in the air, am I okay? Yes, I know the answer to that, but I'm still very attached to look at how much I do. Look at what I've accomplished. And I'm so exhausted of it, I can't even tell you. So it's a work in progress.
Yes. Yes, I hear you so much. I feel that all the time, that as soon as I start to clear my plate a little bit, I reach to put another helping of something on there, as if I can't really get used to the idea of not constantly having all these things going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking about the wounds, if I don't have all those things on the plate, I have to face the remaining wounds. I have to look in the mirror. Okay, why am I feeling this way? What's going on with me? What's it triggering? I don't like doing that. I do it, but it's not super fun. And thinking that if I slow it down, then nothing's going to come to me. I won't accomplish anything. And I don't know about you, but I've found time and time again that when I can slow the projects down, it's amazing what comes to me. You reach out, hey, you want to be on my podcast? I'd be honored. Like things like that happen. But I'm wired to think that I have to like be bleeding from the eyes for things to come to me and beautiful connections to be made and successes to happen. And I have to keep relearning that too over and over again, that that's not true. I'm allowed to be still, but it's very hard for me.
I know. But you're really right. You have to create that space in order for something to come to you, because otherwise you won't even see it. You're so busy trying to manage all the things you have going on, you won't even see what might be coming your way. Yeah. Well, as I said, I related to a lot of your book. The trip I took, I was much younger, so I don't think I was as ready to process some things as maybe you were, because I was still in my mid-20s, and especially the soul searching, the questioning, the doubts, this travel is a great way for that to come up. And so much of your book, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, you had said you did a lot of that, your kind of bigger trip in your 20s by yourself, which I think is huge and important. And I'm sure there was a lot of highs and lows in that, of the excitement and then oh my God, I'm alone, and contemplation. And even if you weren't ready to work through some things, my guess is a lot of seeds were planted at that time. And maybe you worked through more than you actually even realized.
Yeah, that's probably true. And because you are giving self-help, I'm going to say it's true. But I do think what I liked about your trip is that it was planned and you did have a friend. Mine, I was just on a trip with people already. The trip was going to end. And I just said, I'm not getting on the plane. And so then I stayed by myself.
I love that.
Oh, my parents did not love it because they were stuck trying to figure out how to get me home once I was ready to come back. That was before computers. That was before anything. So even the idea of trying to like buy a plane ticket or all these things, you still use things like travel agents. And anyway, yes, but it was an amazing experience. And I really appreciated that you took this experience and that you wrote a book. You compared in the book to Eat, Pray, Love, which I also loved that book. The one thing I appreciated about your book, though, is that you really pinpoint the struggles in a certain way that are a little bit better defined than an Eat, Pray, Love, which is not a slight to Eat, Pray, Love at all. I love that book. But I felt like yours is in that category, but that maybe it was a little bit better defined in terms of what you were really working through.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, it's so weird the way that it unfolded because writing the book, I didn't even know. I don't know. It was very journally. I had to work on it so much when I got home because one of the first drafts that I worked on with my writing coach, she said, you've got like 15 themes going on. So we had to kind of narrow it down. What am I talking about? Everything. But yeah, there was a lot of editing. And it's funny you mentioned that about Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love. Elizabeth Gilbert was at a retreat in India at this ashram end of 2019. And on a whim, I saw it on Instagram. I booked it. It was very cheap to stay at this place. The flight wasn't that expensive at the time. I just sort of piecemealed this rando trip together that I didn't really plan. And then I planned it. And I spent like 9 days hanging out with Liz Gilbert. It was so bizarre.
Wow.
And I didn't even want to talk about that I was a writer with her because I was so fangirling out. And then finally at the end of the trip, I gave her my book and said, I wanted you to read this. You're in it. You inspired me. And she said, way to bury the lead, Michelle, because I just didn't bring it up. We just talked about life stuff. And she's been on a grieving journey of grieving the loss of her partner who died to cancer a few years ago. And
wow.
We talked about, all the themes, the self-doubt and love and loss. And she was a really nice woman, just pleasant to be around. And she did some workshops that were very eye-opening. And she really helped me to hone a little bit more on that aspect of putting your arms around that fear. And rather than rejecting it and saying, get out of here, I don't want to deal with you anymore, saying like, okay, tell me what you're afraid of. And honoring those two parts of ourselves, the adult that knows things and then's trying to kick ass, and then the kid that's like, I'm afraid, and just trying to bring the two of those together. And she gave us some writing exercises around it, and it was hugely helpful. So I was super impressed and nervous because I thought, well, what if my writing idol is just a jerk? And she wasn't. She really wasn't. And I have many writing idols, but she's my idol in that Eat, Pray, Love book really encouraged me. And I thought, I want to write and travel. Why am I not doing that? And that was one of many things that catapulted me out of TV and into the teaching, the writing, the traveling, because with teaching, I've got way more time off.
Right. Exactly. Well, so if people want to find out more about you and keep an eye out for your upcoming book, you do lots of other writing as well. Where can they find you, Michelle?
The best way to find me would be oncameraperformancecoach.com. And that goes into how I help people with the coaching, but it also goes into my writing and my published work, which is on Huffington Post and Elephant Journal, Tiny Buddha. And the book is called Don't Pee in the Wetsuit. That's available on Amazon.
Thank you for saying that title. I'm not sure I said it earlier, and I love the title. That tells you right there that even if it's a book about grief, it's going to be funny.
There's some shenanigans in there. Yes, a lot. So yeah, it's all in oncameraperformancecoach.com. And even questions about writing. I help other writers with everything from structure and pitching an agent and what's the process. I have many people that come to me. I wrote the book. What do I do now? And there's different ways to handle it. Do you want to do it the traditional route? Do you want to self-publish? Those are the kinds of things that I work with people around and help them with. And then, like I said, right now, really, it's a lot of helping people make these very short on-camera videos that are very easy to do from your bedroom with proper lighting to promote yourself, to share what you know, to teach people, to inspire people. There's such an opening right now for that. And so that's what I'm really fascinated, helping people with that technique and helping them to find the confidence to believe in what they already have inside of them and share that unapologetically.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. And I can't wait for the next book.
Thank you for reading the book and thank you for having me. And I think that this is such a great idea and it helps people. And I've loved, seeing who you've talked to, and I can't wait to see more episodes. So thank you, Pam.
You're listening to Art Heals All Wounds. Remember to be in touch on my Facebook page, Art Heals All Wounds, and also on Twitter and Instagram at Art Heals Podcast. Thank you to Michelle Kennedy for being a guest on today's episode of Art Heals All Wounds. If you've been feeling that you need to make more video content to take your business or social media to the next level, or you need to make better video presentations on Zoom, but you're feeling a little unsure about being on camera, I really recommend getting Michelle's help. She'll get you to the bottom of whatever fear is holding you back, and she'll do it with empathy and humor. To find out more about Michelle, go to oncameraperformancecoach.com. That's oncameraperformancecoach.com. I really recommend her book too, Don't Pee in the Wetsuit. And I'm so looking forward for her next book about her experiences as a reporter and anchor to come out. The music you've heard in this podcast is Yellow Light District and Otto Waschenlage Instrumental by Lobo Loco. Beethoven's Piano Sonata No. 15 in D major was performed by Karina Galanian. This episode was edited by Eva Hristova and myself. A big thanks to Lauren Popish from The Wave Podcasting and Swell. And a big thank you and shout out to Alexandra Cole of Podbroads and Podderland for continued support on this podcasting journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow and share with your friends.